von Hohenheim, who's also the co-chair of the Bioeconomy Council in Germany and the spokesperson for the Bioeconomy University Alliance. You're a great education champion for the bioeconomy. And from Ukraine, we actually have somebody speaking on behalf of her own generation, Ms. Jana Wojtowska, who is the Global Bioeconomy Summit's youth champion. And apart from all of the many things she's doing in innovation hubs and startups and the national strategy in Ukraine, you find some time, I hear, to be a PhD student. So we're looking forward to hearing from our three great champions this afternoon. How it's going to work, folks, is very simply Slido. I think you're all familiar with this. You can see the hashtag RNIDaysEU. If you put something into Slido, we can answer it. If you put it in the chat, we'll get a chance to come back to you afterwards. So let's get moving here, and let's have a quick clip on an awareness-raising project funded by Horizon, which is Europe's great research program called Trans to Bio, which is about awareness raising in the bioeconomy. Brilliant. Great video showing where we want to go. So, Commissioner Gabriel, what do you think is the role of the younger generation in making this European Green Deal happen?
Thank you very much, John. And I'd like to say since the beginning that I'm really very glad to participate in this future-oriented panel. So how do you see the role of younger generation? First, I think that we need our youth if you'd like to have fresh ideas, if you'd like to be inspired, and if you'd like, together with the more adequate needs from the present, to project us in the future. So first of all, what I would like is I expect from them ideas. I expect from them to share their views. And that's why we need to listen to them. They are perfectly aware what are the needed skills on the ground, what we need to do in order to support already existing projects, and what we need in order to innovate and to support them in future projects. The second thing, I think that it's not only important to listen to them, more important is to co-create together with them our initiatives and to engage them in the implementation and the follow-up. And that's why here I have one simple, concrete example. Don't forget that since the 1st of June, we have our first ever European Youth Coordinator. What I expect from our coordinator is really to listen to our youth in the field of bioeconomy, to identify what are their expectations and how we can take them into consideration in our policies and how together we can implement those decisions that are taken at European level.
Great. Well, you're leading us into the second question, Commissioner Gabriel. So people are going to ask, what is the European Commission doing to support bioeconomy youth engagement?
Well, first of all, you know that we are leading 4 concrete initiatives to support bioeconomy youth engagement. First, on education. I have launched the Education for Climate Coalition to promote the education community's contribution to the green transition by valorizing concrete action on the ground. With the Education for Climate Coalition, I would like to build a strong community to mobilize and to connect pupils, students, teachers, and all stakeholders across local and national borders to make a difference in their particular neighborhood or region. So I think that here with the field of bioeconomy, we have an extraordinary chance to show this difference. And 2 days ago, I have launched the online platform of the coalition. And here, I think that what is important now is to share again the ideas, to connect and to identify together cross-border projects and how we can implement them. Second, with regards to future activities, I'm really interested to deepening cooperation with the European Bioeconomy University Alliance and with the Bioeconomy Youth Champions Group under the Global Bioeconomy Summit. I think that it's absolutely important that today we have our panelists because they can share their experience, but I expect to share what are your own expectations and how do you see the next steps in order to involve more our youth in this important role. Third, we could work with the Bioeconomy University Alliance to organize a European-wide bioeconomy education and innovation hackathon and matchathon to bring together young talents to encourage interdisciplinary networking in an innovative, real-world lab atmosphere. And finally, by the end of the year, I will table a proposal for a council recommendation on education for environmental sustainability. I know that when we talk about council recommendations, that seems quite far from our citizens, but please, young people, pay a lot of attention to this because, yes, we have initiatives at European level, but that will be only working with our member states, receiving their support, identifying together with them in all their regions and communities how we can better advance things that we can achieve these results. And for me, what is important here is, again, to see how we can define our approach on this education for environmental sustainability, what is the particular role of the bioeconomy here, and especially of our young people. So you can see that we have concrete and not so much initiatives. I think that here we have a very strong base in order to build on the experiences of our young people. But again, and that's why this panel is so much needed, we need to advance. We need to continue to see not only what are the next steps, but how to implement them. And that's why I'm so eager to listen to you.
Well, that's absolutely great, Commissioner. I mean, folks, the doors are open, so let's get onto it and let's get moving. Thank you, Commissioner Gabriel. Professor Iris Lewandowski, I mean, you're an education champion. You're one of the people who's actually put the bioeconomy at the center of education. And, you know, what would you say to people who are listening are the benefits of including bioeconomy in the curricula of universities and schools?
Yeah, thank you very much also for the invitation to talk here about bioeconomy education, which is clearly at my heart. As you may know, the bioeconomy provides us with solutions for the most burning challenges of the 21st century. I mean, these include climate change mitigation, the sustainable management of natural resources within our planetary boundaries, and the supply of a growing population with sufficient and healthy food. And we could also say that the bioeconomy provides us with operational approaches for sustainable development. And through the bioeconomy, we are hoping to achieve this transformation to a sustainable economy by means of first using bio-based, renewable, and thus climate neutral resources. And second, by the use of biological knowledge and innovative technologies. And the third pillar of the knowledge-based bioeconomy is a societal transformation towards a sustainable awareness and sustainable consumption. And at this point, clearly education comes in. To shape the transformation to a sustainable bioeconomy, we require as well experts that have the technical knowledge and the skills to implement the bioeconomy and the value change that make use of sustainably produced bio-based resources. But we also need experts that can shape the sustainability transformation. That means we also need to educate system changes that have transformative and sustainability skills. And therefore, at university level, for example, by the partner universities of the European Bioeconomy University, the EBU, which is an alliance of 6 leading European universities in the field of the knowledge-based bioeconomy, we are purposefully combining the education of technical bioeconomy skills and of transformative skills. So far about the education at university level and why it is required to provide the skills for a future developing sustainable bioeconomy. But we should also offer bioeconomy education from primary school on and offer it in lifelong learning concepts, because for the sustainability transition, we need an educated society that is aware and convinced of the needs of sustainability. We need, so we see by the example of climate change mitigation, that the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions will only work if also the majority of people supports the measures by more environmentally sound behavior, such as reducing meat consumption or adapt to more sustainable mobility patterns. So we have learned that sustainable behavior requires an intrinsic motivation, which best can be obtained when it is already learned during childhood, starting at primary school. And later, for example, on the job, people need more than the motivation to sustainable behavior. They also need to create ideas and technologies to implement sustainable solutions. I would like to conclude with one aspect that I consider relevant also for education in the bioeconomy, and that is entrepreneurship. Startups are important for bringing bioeconomic innovations to the markets, and by educating about how to implement the innovation ecosystems, we hope to support a living bioeconomy startup scene or culture that makes use of the bio-based resources and also brings the business opportunities into rural areas, for example, by linking on-farm biorefinery modules. As we have learned from experience, one of the most important skills that an entrepreneur requires is courage, and that is something that you cannot only learn during your university studies. However, the spirit of entrepreneurship should be part of university curricula in order to motivate and enable young people to create startups. And in the EBU, we have a dedicated project which is called FIBI, Fostering Entrepreneurship for the Bioeconomy, and it aims at equipping the bioeconomy students with sustainable entrepreneurship skills to speed up the European expansion of the bioeconomy sector. This project, by the way, is funded by the Erasmus Plus program, and including entrepreneurship into education, as we have seen, can also be very successful. And we see this by the practical examples of the University of Hohenheim, where we have many students that kick off startups in different areas of the bioeconomy, including, for example, novel food products or fruit drinks from high nature value orchid meadows, edible dishes, urban gardening systems, bio-based and biological crop protection measures, and many others.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I guess what you're saying here is, if we take education, innovation, they're kind of the apps of human progress to the future. So what are the main challenges of mainstreaming bioeconomy education across Europe, and in particular across all of Europe? Because one of the things about the bioeconomy is we don't want it to be for the golden triangle. It has to be for every part of Europe where there are huge opportunities in the next economy. So what do you think are the main challenges of mainstreaming bioeconomy in education across Europe?
Yeah, that is very true what you say, that we need a European approach here. But let me start with saying that instead of thinking about the mainstream of the bioeconomy education, I first would like to consider how we can develop our bioeconomy education programs in a way that it takes also the regional demands into consideration. So although we can discuss and develop solutions for a sustainable bioeconomy on an international level, we have to implement it on a regional level. That means, for example, that the bioeconomy experts need to be able to identify what are the best uses of the regionally available bio-based resources and which bio-based value chains will be best suited for the regional conditions. And also the implementation of sustainable bioeconomic solutions has to take the demands of the regional stakeholders, such as farmers who need to participate in the value chain development, as well as the regional biomass processing companies, into consideration and support them participating. Here I see a task for the education in bioeconomy in that it needs to provide skills that enables to address and communicate with different local and regional stakeholder groups. And for this purpose, we also have, for example, under the project BioBec, which is an EU BBI funded project, here some efforts to develop business concepts for regional bioeconomy education centers, which will be implemented in different regions of Europe. But of course, we also need an international and pan-European cooperation in the bioeconomy education, because actually bioeconomy is a very broad concept, encountering many sectors, many technologies, and most importantly, many sustainability demands. And here the challenge is to how best make use and coordinate the bioeconomic education within Europe. We founded the EBU also with view on education and how we could generate synergies from the different and rich expertise of the partners. The challenge here is really clearly that the cooperation requires resources for the development of an international education program, and that such a cooperation can only function if the educators as well as the students and the young people have the opportunity to visit, to meet each other at the different institutions. And in the development of our European educational program on bioeconomy, we are very much supported in this by the Erasmus Plus program, which is the EU's program to support education in Europe. So we are presently, for example, with the help of this program, establishing a joint bioeconomy qualification program for the EBU students at master level. But of course, it is also relevant that those universities that are pioneers in bioeconomy education provide support so that material and learnings can help other European universities to develop suitable programs at their locations. And one approach here that I see is certainly the provision of educational material. So here again, the support of the Erasmus program is important for us, because I consider that the use of digital tools will help to tackle very much this challenge. So in our Erasmus project ABBY, Accelerating the Transition Towards a Bio-Based Economy, we are developing an online learning platform. So we develop MOOCs, open online access, massive open online access courses on the bioeconomy, which hopefully will then be able or can be accessed by students all over the world from other universities, but also from interested other groups, like young students. I would like to conclude here with the main challenge, which I personally see in bioeconomy education. And that is actually the difficulty to explain how the sustainable bioeconomy can function. Because bioeconomy is a clearly interdisciplinary and also transdisciplinary endeavor. And therefore, we also need to go new ways in bioeconomy education. We did so, for example, when we were writing our textbook here on bioeconomy and how to shape the transition to a sustainable bio-based economy. For writing this book, we started by asking the student, as you said before, involving the students, and we asked them what it requires for educating them in sustainable bioeconomy and what it requires to write an effective bioeconomy book. And finally, they designed this textbook and even wrote a chapter. So this project became a nice cooperation between an international team and students and the teachers from different disciplines. And to make this book accessible to students and all interested people all over the world, the University of Hohenheim distributed the textbook Open Access. So we hope that we can contribute to overcoming one of the bottlenecks to mainstreaming bioeconomic education, which is the easy access to information and knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Lewandowski. So we need to find a new vernacular language for the bioeconomy by listening to young people, going local, bringing the bioeconomy home in regions and connecting through the programs that are open, as Commissioner Gabriel has been saying, like Erasmus and these other youth platforms. Now, let's cut to the chase here and let's talk to the generation we're talking about and maybe see what you have to tell us about. Jana, I think you know the Commissioner from the Global Bioeconomy Summit as a Global Bioeconomy champion. We're trying to restart the planet. I mean, what's the role of startups in the bioeconomy in this? How do you see the role of younger generation in this context? And how do we get the bioeconomy to move startups into this great space?
First of all, I would like to start that, of course, participation of younger generation in such transformative world as we see today is absolutely essential, especially when we're talking about transforming our societies towards a climate resilient future. These days, younger generation want to see bioeconomy developed in an inclusive and sustainable way. And today, as a representative of Bioeconomy Youth Champions, I would like to present our takeouts from the Bioeconomy Summit and the workshop that we have developed together. So we as champions were selected, and as a group we decided that we would like to develop a roadmap for youth engagement in global bioeconomy development. For this purpose, we have developed a workshop centered around the timeline building exercise, in which young participants were asked to place a present number of events that would shape the future they want to see. So the workshop provided some kind of a platform to identify key areas that bioeconomy youth can collaboratively work towards. The impact young generation is hoping to attain in the near-term future is threefold. These are establishing strong youth voice in the long-term development of the global bioeconomy, connecting young people from the global by establishing an active youth bioeconomy community, and of course fostering cooperations with the existing communities on the periphery of the bioeconomy. Investing in and creating opportunities for youth to accomplish the most challenging and sometimes at some point escapade ideas and solutions can build the ground for sustainable implementation of the bioeconomy strategies and of course the promising objectives of the EU Green Deal policy, whether it is reduction of air pollution or enhancing biodiversity. Today, millions of bold, innovative concepts are born daily in young minds around the world, but unfortunately, not many of them are used for the world's benefit or even taken for consideration due to the lack of access to the information, which was mentioned before, financial issues, gaps in the socioeconomic status. These factors inevitably limit young people's wish to pursue and sometimes even to dream of bringing their innovations into our lives. And unblocking this, I would call it youth jewel box, should become one of the EU's key principles, key priorities. First and foremost, young people want to see them engaged in the dialogue with the decision makers, in the lively dialogue. They want to establish communication in a transparent manner both ways. They stand ready to take part in the process of changing the business as usual way of doing, and they stand ready to showcase solutions. However, in return, they call for increased educational mentorship opportunities, financial and institutional support, strengthening collaboration across disciplines, geographies, and of course, ages among key bioeconomy stakeholders.
Well, that's quite an ambitious agenda, and it's a real challenge. You asked us there about the engagement of young people with decision makers, and you've got, one of Europe's top decision makers sitting here. So, what's the message in terms of how can policymakers engage youth better in decision making?
So when at the workshop of the Global Bioeconomy Summit, we have asked our participants, establishing the network of youth communities or so-called councils has been one of the most often mentioned engagement mechanisms young people see future in. They see establishing of an active youth communities as an approved platform for collaboration, boosting innovation and partnership. And such councils, or even somebody would call them hubs, can as well serve as point of establishing a communication channel with decision-making authorities and creating long-term relationships. These institutions, councils, could further act effectively as for promotion ideas among other young people and work for communities' capacity building. And a network of young people brought together today will form the foundation of global institutions moving forward, bringing the bigger stage for a youth community on the global level. This is especially, I would like to highlight, crucial during the time of global fragmentation as we see it today. However, there are not many active bioeconomy youth communities you could see today, even on a global scale. And even for those that exist, they lack organizational and managerial capacities to develop sustainably. And what we're searching here is development in sustainable manner. The first action required, as we find out, is initial promotion to form such youth communities on the ground. In order to perform sustainable, the wish for creation of such organizations should go from within the society itself. In this case, Youth Council performance will be built on principles of an active citizenship and will not be dependent on incentive grants or other external financial support, which is a usual case. This can be achieved through showcasing the benefits of such form of civic engagement, provision of guiding support through the process of youth communities creation. And of course, we should not forget about further creation of training opportunities. They are vital. Capacity building should be directed towards fostering communities' capacities on self-governance, meaning the organization itself, their capacities for strategic planning, project and resource management, engagement with the authorities. With this, policymakers, on the one hand, will be able to have multiple opportunities to interact with youth communities through their capacity building events. And on the other hand, they will be also building the pool of strong, self-sufficient institutions, organizations, youth communities. Yeah. They will be ready at the end for long-lasting collaboration within the policy decision-making process.
And there was me thinking you wouldn't have anything to say, Jana. That was fantastic. I mean, so many ideas and so many very practical recommendations. So I don't know what you feel after that, Commissioner Gabriel.
Well, on one side, it's very useful for me, because somehow I can see that we are looking at the same direction and we are in the right way in order to improve some of the things that you need. And I will react on some very concrete things, because I think that the main challenge is really to continue to provide information, to raise more visibility to what we have, and how with this instrument and with your experience and new ideas, we can further develop and help your ambitions. Because you mentioned some important topics. When we talk about this access to information, strategic capacity, this networking, I immediately think about the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. Mm-hmm. We need really to popularize their activities. We have a very strong community here where, and what is very specific to EIT, we have the knowledge triangle, research, innovation, and education together. We have a regional innovation scheme, so that means that we pay attention to all our young people everywhere in Europe. But it's really true that we need somehow to strengthen the channels of communication, this exchange of quality information in the right time, in order to be sure that you have this information and we can support you. The second thing is that, of course, now we have to seize the momentum, because you have, Jana, so clear objectives, so clear demands. So my question is, on one side, I think that I would like really to have you on board in our Education for Climate Coalition, and I'll come back to this, and in our conference for the future of Europe. It's really the right time now to raise the voice of our young people in this extraordinary field of the bioeconomy, because we are not talking here only about skills, we are not talking only about jobs, we are talking about us as Europe, a leader in this field, thanks to your innovative ideas. And that's why, Professor Lewandowski, I very much would like to continue to have this permanent dialogue with you, because you mentioned some key elements. Of course, education is key, but it's true that We need to have a common European approach. What that means, skills in bioeconomy. What are the competencies? How to define the behavior and the attitudes. And that's why I mentioned this Council recommendation, because in this Council recommendation on education for environmental sustainability, there will be a particular focus on bioeconomy. So we need definitely hear your ideas. The second important element, use the new opportunities created by Green Erasmus+. You mentioned a lot our program. This time we managed to double the budget, the biggest ever. There will be a lot of initiatives in our member states with the resilience and recovery facility plans. So that's one element that I would like to add. Please look for synergies, because with what we are doing with Erasmus+, that can be improved and strengthened by the recovery and resilience facility plus in order to achieve a critical mass of young people, of startups in this field. The second element is education for climate coalition. And that's why I think that that's somehow reassuring that we are in the right direction, because now we have this common platform where we can share materials, what is the need to change our pedagogy, how to train our teachers. Don't forget that they have an extraordinarily important role to play. And that's why I think that it will be crucial that by September and in autumn, I would like really to launch officially the coalition. It will be important to have as much as possible contributions, because don't forget, the European coalition will be composed of national coalitions, and they will all make regional and local actions. I think you rightly say how important it is to take the regional demand. That's an extremely important element, and that's why with Education for Climate Coalition, I think that we are really in the right way. And I very much count on you. Don't hesitate. You are 6 in your alliance. I hope that you will stay open to the others, because somehow I perceive your message, share, support with others. But we have this concrete tool now at place, and we can really transform it into something beneficial for the bioeconomy, even if it is not easy.
Do you want to come back on that, Jana?
Sure, I fully support what have been mentioned, and I think that we should take the action going and using the opportunity of the community that we have developed already with the bioeconomy Young Champions, and I hope that it will be growing with the next bioeconomy summit. I think that we can take this as a ground for finding new ideas, new innovative collaborations from within the best, and not if I would also would like to be a bit bold, going further than just Europe, maybe from within the world, because Young Bioeconomy Champions, they have brought together people from around the world, and I think that sometimes we need to think a bit broader than just looking at the scale of the Europe.
Couldn't agree more. I think we all realize that our responsibility is to our neighbours, this one planet. But that's where Europe's leadership in the world. What you're doing with all these different programs is to open them up and to make them available and make them accessible. We have some questions here on Slido. So just to follow through on what we say about engaging and answering and listening. Maybe the most popular trending one is about the bioeconomy. Is it only a political construct, and how can we address and encourage the public to have a bottom-up approach to achieve its goals? And maybe just to get the ball rolling on that before I hand over to you, maybe Professor Lewandowski. The bioeconomy is a funny thing, because it's actually something we've all been living in. It's the oldest idea when people were just making food and fisheries and forestry. But now we live in a joint-up world with joint-up problems and joint-up opportunities. And we have to work out how are we to trade off all of these different ways in which living organisms are actually used. You know, farming and forestry, and we have technologies that can turn waste into almost anything. So it's a place where we're going to find ourselves living. And I think the issue there, how do we encourage the general public to have a bottom-up approach to achieve its goals, is by, I think, involvement probably. What do you think, Professor Lewandowski?
Yeah, definitely. Involvement. Education, in the sense, education is not only of young people. I mean, that is also getting to know what we can do, what we can contribute, and that we have means to contribute towards a sustainable development and a sustainable bioeconomy. And clearly, the bioeconomy as such. I mean, we have already a lot of bioeconomy. We are depend on the bioeconomy, on agriculture, on food, etc. But clearly, the vision for the future bioeconomy and the demand for it is that we have here a pathway towards sustainable development. And we clearly are beyond now discussing what could be our sustainability goals. We are now in the middle of discussing how can we realize a sustainable economic system. And here, the bioeconomy is an important tool and an important contribution. And by raising awareness of the demands, but also on how everybody can contribute to that, we will hopefully make the sustainable bioeconomy happen.
I think there's a word you used earlier on, Jana, as well, about how people need to be active in this. One of the things we've seen that works a lot is when rural communities or communities across Europe see the opportunity for themselves, for their communities, for their local economy, actually to profit from the bioeconomy by doing it sustainably and to add value in the next economy, where in the current economy sometimes it's very difficult for them to kind of get the value from their produce. So incentives at the ground floor, if people are engaged, is another way. I don't know. I mean, how do you think? You're in the political world all the time, and you have to communicate very complex ideas. How do you think you can get people to get involved in these kind of things, Commissioner?
Well, I think that it's not only up to us. We have really to work together. We have to innovate, and we have certainly to use some of our traditional channels, but now we all can see that it's not enough. So that's why, for me, always it's important to have these information campaigns, but I think that one of the most important things is really to involve citizens since the beginning.
Yeah.
And to lead by example, to convince by example. That's why I'm sure that we have thousands of examples that are not visible. And
yeah.
One of the main challenges for me is how we can give them visibility as a critical mass in order to convince, because everyone after will see that there is a direct impact in their daily lives that's beneficial for the region, that's beneficial for the young startuppers. So I think that here now it's one of the main challenges, and that's why I mentioned the youth coordinator and the European Education for Climate Coalition together with the Conference for the Future of Europe, because I think that here we have a chance. Another important channel for me for communication is really to work very closely with our regions. Remember, we have now a joint action plan with the Committee of the Region, first ever in the history of our two institutions, and they are eager really to work in this field because they know that in their regions there is extraordinary talents and projects in this field, and they already ask us, let's organize a knowledge exchange platform. Let's not only define what are our common objectives, but how to scale some of the good practices, how to be sure that at the beginning we can have transferable ideas, inspiring ideas. And that's why I think that maybe that I will be a little bit provocative. Why not to use the chance of the new European Bauhaus in order to provide these ideas in the field of bioeconomy? We need to integrate this.
I think that's a brilliant idea, but who am I? Maybe out there, some of you will know that the Bauhaus, which is being led by the Commissioner Gabriel with the President, is about design. There's a question in there earlier on about how would we get, I think it's gone off the screen, how do we get design into this? And so much depends on design. And not simply in terms of its beauty, which is an important thing in everyday life, but its efficiency, which is part of where we have to get to. So that's an interesting one to throw out there. We have a few minutes left. And maybe to come to some of the other questions which are here. And in the chat, by the way, folks, if you're writing the chat, responding to some of the challenges that have been laid out, we will come back to them after these events, and we will take them on board and work over them. There's a number of linked questions around education. Maybe, you know, what the skills in education, what skills are needed to educate younger generations in the bioeconomy? How do we raise awareness amongst students? what level of education is needed to work in the different bioeconomy sectors? Is this only for postdoctoral people, brilliant people that we see like Jana who are building the next economy? Probably the answer is yes and no. Tell us, Professor Lewandowski, in a couple of sentences, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the most important skill, and that was the question, that somebody needs to educate in bioeconomy is the intrinsic motivation to contribute to sustainable development. So I'm saying that because to give an example is that when we want to go towards or implement a sustainable bioeconomy, then it's often the young people or even the students that come home and say to their parents, this is our future and we need to shape it sustainably. And at school, I have heard that, I don't know, driving car is maybe not the best solution. We need other mobility concepts, for example. And it's often the parents that react on their children's then demand and ideas. So if the teacher brings this to the mind of the students and discusses it with them, I think that is a skill, is a willingness, and it's also the teachers that give good examples themselves and that bring examples into the school and discuss it with the students. I think that is the most important. And we also see it at university level. It's actually that we experience that only a bioeconomy student is really dedicated to sustainability if he or she is intrinsically motivated and convinced that it is the right way on the one hand side, and also on the other hand side gets from us, it teaches some tools, some approaches, some examples of how also sustainability can work into in practice.
Right.
That can be something like skills, technical skills, showing that we have to think about how to be more efficient in our processing, production of processes, but that can also be skills in transformative skills I mentioned, where we go out and talk to the people and so become a messenger of
Very good.
bioeconomy, for example.
Thank you very much. A very clear message. So look, I think the opportunity is there. Commissioner Gabriel is putting the means in front of us. We need to access them. We need to do co-creation with citizens at the beginning. We will be putting in place the studies and the means to do it. We need to go regional. We need to encourage startups, and we need to give access to all this information. I don't know if you want to have a last word, Commissioner, before we finish up, a message to the people who are watching here.
Thank you, and be bold. There, you have our support.
Thank you very much, everybody. I know you're the bioeconomists of the future, so go out and make the bioeconomy your business in your region where you are. Thank you very much to Jana Wojtowska, to Professor Ars Lewandowski, and of course to our Commissioner Gabriel. Thank you and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.